At last, it seems like luck is beginning to shine on me now that the old man has passed away. Finally, it seems like luck is starting to come my way, huh? Now that the old man is dead. It's outrageous to say something so disrespectful so soon after his father's passing, especially considering that his father supported us in many ways since our marriage. Do you even understand what you're saying? Of course, I understand. I'll be taking the land and the fortune you inherited. Quite a lot, didn't you? You've been waiting for this all along. Of course, I couldn't wait for him to pass on. He's completely misunderstanding everything. I could never do such a thing. What? No matter how much you bluff, it's useless. Here, he threw something at me. Pick it up. What he threw was a divorce paper already signed. A divorce paper. You can't do anything without me, so I'll make good use of your fortune. What if I refuse? Are you stupid? What other option is there besides divorce? For me, it was an opportunity. Everything up to now has been an illusion, and he doesn't know my true self. Hey, what are you doing? What does it look like? I'm leaving this house. You'll regret it. That's my line. Wait, you are helpless if you leave. We'll see about that. After all, your company has deals with my company, doesn't it? My company? What are you talking about? You'll find out soon enough. Oh, and don't worry about the divorce paper. I'll take care of it myself. And so, I left the house immediately, filed for divorce, and then I called his company. It's me. The project is cancelled, and all contracts up to now are terminated. Please wait. If you do that, my true self is the head of a company with 7,000 employees. Now that it came to this, I'll go all the way. I wonder what he will do next. I also have a trump card. I am Maya Willow, who just turned 40 not long ago. I've gotten this old, haven't I? As I was lost in thoughts at home, I heard someone calling me. It was my husband, Leo. What are you doing sitting around here? Nothing much. If you're bored, you can at least clean the house. Know your place. I sighed softly, almost imperceptibly. It wasn't like this when we first met. I met Leo just a year before last year. At that time, I had no particular interest in marriage. It was as if I was married to my job. Yet, I ended up marrying Leo. It all started with my father, huh? I'm fine. No matter how many times you try, I have no intention of marrying. Now, don't say that. You're almost 40, aren't you? Being single at that age is. Don't worry, father. I intended to refuse, but my father is stubborn. He kept saying he's a good man, and I would understand if I met him every single day. But I knew this was my father's strategy. How about now? Don't you want to meet him? Not at all. It felt like merely a month of this back and forth. And on this day, as usual, he tried to persuade me into meeting a man. No matter how many times you say it, my mind won't change. Then, at least look at his photo, and then you can decide. I'll look, but that's all. Oh, now where did I put that photo? In your study, as always, isn't it? I see. Father went down to his study on the first floor to get the photo. Then, from the direction of the study where my father was supposed to be, I heard a thud. I immediately went to check and found my father lying face down. Father, what happened? Hearing the commotion, my mother also came to the study. Mom, even in such a situation, my mother was composed. Maya, call an ambulance right away. Okay. I called, and the ambulance arrived in about 15 minutes. My father was unconscious, but his heart was still beating. He was taken to the hospital, and treatment began. My father had a stroke, a blood vessel temporarily blocked, causing him to lose consciousness. Father, sorry. Who would have thought I'd collapse? This is no laughing matter. Fortunately, there was no other concern on his health, so he could come home soon. However, my father had all the risk factors that could cause this: high blood pressure, smoking, and drinking. The doctor warned him to be careful, but my father listened as if it was someone else's problem. From now on, no more alcohol or cigarettes. But that's my pleasure. But what if you collapse again? My father especially liked drinking and had a drink every night. He was particularly fond of wine and would collect it from all over the world. Then, my father made a proposition. If you say so, I have a proposition too. A proposition? This is not the kind of situation to negotiate. If you want me to listen, you'll have to accept my condition. And what's that condition? Meet the man I want to introduce you to. Ha! If you can't do that, I'll continue smoking and drinking as much as I want. It seemed like my father was even enjoying this situation. But if that's what it takes for him to live longer, I was willing to accept his condition. Okay, I'll meet him. That's good. I'm glad you said that. Mother, who was in the kitchen, had an expression as if to say, here we go again. Well, there's no time to waste. I'll call him now. No, not now. When something is decided, don't hesitate and just do it. This is our family's motto. I've never heard that before. Well, it's something I just decided. I'm really at my wit's end with my father. Who would believe that he's the president of a large corporation with thousands of employees? His employees would be surprised, no doubt. And as my father said, a man came over. Sorry for the sudden invitation. And this here is Leo, a promising figure from a company we do business with. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. I'm Maya Willow. This was how I met Leo. Despite it being our first meeting, we clicked in a conversation about work. As it turned out, my father and Leo met at a president's social. Moreover, my father told Leo all the incredible things about me. By the way, I heard from President Willow that you were incredibly popular in your school days, turning down boys left and right. Is that true? Ha! What's that about? I glared at my father. Don't glare at me like that. You've been saying strange things again. What are you talking about? It's almost all true. Well, maybe I exaggerated a bit. You really shouldn't believe what he says. He exaggerates quite a bit. Is that so? A person who can't detect lies from truth isn't trustworthy. That's why a lie is sometimes necessary. What kind of convenient excuse is that? I'm really just fed up with my father. Then we had drinks. Of course, my father had a soft drink. Leo became talkative after getting drunk, revealing his ambitions. I'm going to be rich. Rich, yeah. I'll live in a house like this one and eventually become a president by any means necessary. What do you mean by that exactly? As I said. Then, Leo fell asleep. As he was for tonight, we decided to let him sleep in the guest room. While I was cleaning up, my father came over. What did you think of him? I think he's a very interesting person. He reminds me a bit of my father. Right. I've thought so since the moment we met. Plus, his father used to be the president of a small company. Sadly, he passed away. I see. Anyway, he's a good man. I could understand why my father was so smitten with Leo. He was, how do you say, captivating when he spoke. The next morning, when I went to wake up Leo in the guest room, I was about to knock when I heard him talking to someone. I understand things are going smoothly here. Yes, don't worry. I'll make sure it's done. Waiting until his phone call was over, I knocked. Good morning. Good morning. Sorry, I heard you were on the phone. Was everything okay? Ah, that was my mom. She worries a lot. I see. My family is similar. Leo looked a bit troubled at that moment. Eventually, we ended up getting married, which was surprising even to myself, but equally exciting. However, I was unaware of the incredible dark he harbored. Leo seemed quite happy to become a part of our family. My father suggested we live together, but we decided it would be nice for the two of us to live on our own. Then, my father arranged an apartment for us. Looking forward to our future together. Me too. Initially, he was considerate of me, and every day was fresh and enjoyable. However, at some point, he began to be harsher with me. It felt like he looked down on me. Did you clean properly? I just got back, so no, not yet. Can't you even do that? Maybe. What they said was true. What are you talking about? This was how he greeted me coming back from work. Bliss and, well, from now on, you will follow my orders. Why should it be like that? Don't talk back to me, or I won't forgive you. Leo wouldn't listen to anything I said. It soon became clear why he was acting this way. It turned out my father told him I was a woman who couldn't do anything. Moreover, he said I was incompetent at work and just a menial worker. I immediately complained to my father, why would you say something like that? It was just a joke. Thanks to your joke, I've been having a hard time. Please clear up this misunderstanding with him. All right, but I didn't expect him to take it seriously. My father seemed a bit surprised. Surprised? No, sorry. I'll talk to him properly. My father seemed to have explained everything to Leo soon after. Whether he was convinced or not, Leo appeared to go back to normal, but he still seemed half doubtful of me. I couldn't stand it. Do you still believe what father said? Huh? Does it look like that? The way you look at me, it feels like you're looking down on me. Hearing that, Leo apologized and begged for forgiveness. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I wasn't thinking. No, it's okay, as long as you understand. Leo became quite reserved about work talk, possibly out of consideration for me. However, he seemed to start gauging my reactions. If it weren't for that, I think he was truly a great husband. This went on for about half a year. When one afternoon, I got a call from my mother. My father had collapsed again and was taken to the hospital. Father! Has he collapsed at home again? This time it seems serious. Is it that bad? He's stable now. Anyway, I'm going to the hospital. I rushed to my father. When I arrived at the hospital, he was in surgery, and all I could do was pray. How is your father? I asked. Of course, Leo was out golfing with clients. I wasn't able to reach him, so I left him a message. It'll be okay, right? You know, right? Your father isn't so weak, maybe, but the surgery went on for hours, and I was worried. Finally, the surgery was over. Doctor, how is my father? The surgery was successful. However, there might be some impairment in his speech. What's important is what comes next. Hearing that there might be lasting damage left me uncertain about what to do next. It'll be okay. Thank you. Leo gently placed his hand on my shoulder. It was a moment when I felt truly grateful to be married to him. 2 days later, my father woke up. We were anxious about the possibility of speech impairment, as the doctor mentioned, but it seemed we worried for nothing. Father, you're okay. Maya and everyone else, I've caused you all a lot of worries. I'm so relieved, I fought back tears. Since my father would be hospitalized for a while, we decided to visit him regularly. That's when my father confessed something to me. Why would you do that after you had quit? Sorry, Leo would invite me after work. I couldn't really say no to my son-in-law. That's not the point. This is the second time. I've definitely learned my lesson now, so my father hadn't quit drinking or smoking after all, and Leo was involved too. I rushed home, intending on confronting Leo. Why did you let my father drink? What's gotten into you all of a sudden? Answer my question. Your father seemed stressed from work. If it led to this, then it was pointless. We can't be sure it was the alcohol, but it could have been a contributing factor. What's the point of arguing about this? Are you trying to run away from this? Leo looked annoyed and went to his study. From that day on, we barely spoke. When I tried to talk to him, he mostly ignored me. He was secretly up to something. He was on the phone every night. At first, I thought he might be cheating, but it seemed to be something else. Occasionally, he mentioned things were going smoothly or that it would be soon. I remembered hearing something similar before, but couldn't quite recall. Driven by curiosity, I entered his study while he was out, a place I normally didn't go. I haven't been here since we got married, have I? Looking around the room, everything is neat and orderly, with nothing out of place. Moving towards the desk at the far end, however, the desk surface is the only area where items are scattered among the clutter. Among the clutter were photos of my father and me, along with various pieces of information about the company. I couldn't understand why he was collecting all this. Then, I heard the front door. Leo had returned. He's back. This is bad. In my panic, I dropped something from the desk. As I hurried to put it back, I noticed something written in red on the back of a photo, but I couldn't make out what it said. Hey, what are you doing here? I was just thinking about cleaning. Who said you could come in here? Answer me. Calm down, will you? How can I stay calm? Did you see what's on the desk, yes or no? I didn't see anything. You've really done something terrible now. He was particularly concerned about the desk, suggesting that what I saw was concerning to him. As these thoughts ran through my head, Leo locked the room's door and approached me. What are you going to do? I need to make you understand your place. Stop it, Leo. Leo grabbed my arm forcefully. Listen, don't go against me. If you do, you'll see hell. Leo's eyes were serious. Even I could tell that. Shortly after, he changed the locks on the room to keep me out. Our relationship was no longer that of husband and wife. I even hesitated to speak to him. The only comfort I had was that my father is okay. Good for you to come. Yeah, what's wrong? You are not quite yourself. Maybe I ate too much. Leo, how are you doing? Is the work going well? Yes. Thanks to you, I was able to secure a big contract. I didn't do much, really. It's all thanks to your own talent. Leo seemed amicable, but that was only in the hospital. He only put on a good face in front of my father. Continuing like this would only drain me, both mentally and physically. Time flew by swiftly. Today was the day to visit my father in the hospital. I'm going to visit my father, but I'll pass. You go by yourself. I think father is looking forward to seeing you. I went before, so that should be enough. But enough. It takes time to go to the hospital, and I am busy. I couldn't believe he would say something like that. However, fearing what he might do if I showed any disagreement, I was overwhelmed by fear. In the end, I went to visit my father alone. My father, initially resisting his hospitalization, seemed to have quickly befriended the other patients with his inherent cheerfulness. Father, I found you here. It's time for your temperature check, so we should head back. Is it that time already? Let's head back, then. After greeting the other patients in the lounge, we returned to his room. Leo isn't with you today? He's a bit busy today. He said hello. I see. I couldn't bring myself to tell my father that Leo didn't want to visit. How have you and Leo been getting along recently? Why do you ask all of a sudden? Just wondering if you're getting along well. Well, it's okay. Didn't you ask that before? Did I? I've been forgetful lately. It's just you today, so that's good. What do you mean? I have something important to talk about. What my father had to say was beyond anything I could have imagined. My life was about to level up, and my feelings towards Leo would turn into hatred. So, what's the matter? Listen carefully. I'm falling apart. It might be difficult for me to continue as president. Then what about the company? That's why I found someone suitable to take my place. Who? Of course, it's you, Maya. Me? That's impossible. It's okay. Everyone is new at first, but you've been by my side for years, seeing how things are done. I've already discussed it with the other executives. But still, this is so sudden. Please. I had never seen my father plead like this. He had always worked hard to protect the company and our family. Maybe now it was my turn to protect him. After all, I am his daughter. Okay, that's my girl. Thank you. In return, you have to take proper rest and get better, okay? Understood. But don't tell anyone about becoming a president yet, okay? I understand. Not even Leo? Leo too. Got it. My father's gaze was stern. I didn't understand why he said that at the time, but I agreed. The reason behind his words became clear much later. Becoming the president didn't mean that I could start giving orders right away. I needed to relearn everything my father had been doing. Fortunately, our company's executives were knowledgeable and truly helpful. 2 months passed. You've been coming home late recently. What are you doing? I've been given some extra work. A younger employee quit recently. I wondered if my lie would hold, but it seemed to work. Listen to this. I secured a huge contract today, and it's with your company. Is that so? I knew about the contract being finalized today, but I didn't know Leo was involved. I hope you can learn something from this, though I doubt you can. Irritated by his comment, I couldn't help but respond. You won't know until you try. Realizing I might have said too much, I felt it was dangerous to provoke Leo further and quickly backtracked. Right, I forgot. There's no way I could do it. As long as you understand. A few days later, we received a call from the hospital. My father's condition had suddenly changed, and this night was critical. Unable to stay still, I left work and rushed to the hospital. My mother had already arrived and looked visibly exhausted. Maya, how's father? He's in his room right now. In the room, my father was lying down with a respirator. He was barely breathing, and it seemed like he could stop at any moment. According to the doctor, a blood clot had formed in his brain again. Then what about surgery? The doctor hesitated a bit before speaking. The surgery was successful, but the impact on the brain was significant. There's a possibility he might not wake up from this. I felt resentful that there was nothing I could do for my father. Before he collapsed, he didn't want surgery. He was recently experiencing memory issues, fearing he might forget his family. Then why was he still worried about his family? He couldn't leave things this way. Then my father woke up. Waking up from this state was unexpected. The doctor looked quite surprised. Maya, are you there? Yes, I'm here. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. I'm listening. Be careful of Leo. I'm sorry for everything. What do you mean? In my studies drawer, there's an envelope. Look at it. After saying that, my father's breathing grew weaker and he passed away. Everything turned dark in front of me. Are you okay? Yeah, I just calmed down a bit. I need to call Leo, too. I tried calling, but there was no response. He's not answering. No. Leo never showed up at the hospital. When I got back home, Leo was acting as usual. Why the rush? Why didn't you answer your phone? I was a bit busy. So what happened? Father passed away just now at the hospital. Leo then looked down, trembling slightly. What, finally? Excuse me now. My plan is in its final phase. What are you talking about? It doesn't concern you. Well, actually, it does. Then Leo returned to his study with a creepy smile on his face. Despite my curiosity, I had a lot to do. I went to my parents' house to prepare for my father's funeral. I'm sorry to trouble you when you're so busy. What are you talking about? This is the priority. We divided the funeral preparations. During a break, my mother mentioned something. By the way, didn't Father say to check his study? Oh, I almost forgot. I'll go check now. My father's study was at the end of the first floor. It had been a while since I last entered inside. I found the envelope as instructed and immediately looked through its contents. After reading it, everything that had happened became clear. Living in a big, so this is why Leo. It was something my father gathered for my sake. On the back of the envelope, there was a handwritten message from my father. Reading it made me realize I no longer needed to hold back. My anger and hatred toward Leo grew. I vowed to keep these feelings hidden from Leo until the right moment came. The funeral proceeded smoothly. And I believe we gave my father a proper send-off. But of course, it wasn't over yet. Later, my mother called, and we decided to gather at my parents' house. Being an only child, it was just my mother, me, and Leo. Thank you for coming. What's happening today? We're going to open Father's will. When did he prepare that? Apparently, my father had prepared it during his hospital stay. The contents of the will, as revealed, were the family home and half of the estate my father left were given to my mother and the rest to me. But there was more. I inherited the land too. I wouldn't know what to do with the land, dear. I'm sure you'll put it to good use, Maya. I wonder, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Leo barely suppressing a smile. The will reading concluded without an issue, and my mother suggested we go out to eat. Sorry, but I'll be heading back. What? But Mom invited us. Got a problem with that? Not really. Then I'm off. Leo left just like that. All I could do was sigh. Sorry, Mom. I think I'll head back too. That might be best, dear. We can always have dinner another time. Sorry, see you later. After leaving my parents' house, I immediately followed Leo. He might be up to no good. When I got home, Leo was lounging on the sofa as if he owned the place. What took you so long? Were you dawdling? I came straight home. Well, sit down. There's something I want to talk about. I had a bad feeling but sat down anyway. Leo started talking with a smirk. Finally, it seems like luck is starting to come my way, huh? Now that the old man is dead, it's finally my turn. Get it? So, this was his true nature. Do you even understand what you're saying? Yeah, I get it. I'll be taking the land and the fortune you inherited. Quite a lot, didn't you? You've been waiting for this all along. Of course. I couldn't wait for him to pass on. He has no idea what is coming. I could never do such a thing. What? No matter how much you bluff, it's useless. Here. He threw something at me. Pick it up. What he threw was a divorce paper already filled. The divorce paper? You can't do anything without me, so I'll make good use of your fortune. So, give it to me, Maya Willow. Still saying that? It's the truth, isn't it? You're useless at home, so I, the skillful one, will take it. What an idiot! And if I refuse? Are you stupid? What other option is there but divorce? For me, it was an opportunity. Everything up to now had been an illusion, and he doesn't know my true self. Hey, what are you doing? What do you think? I'm leaving this house. You'll regret it. That's my line. Wait. You are helpless if you leave. Is that so? I believe your company and my company had deals, right? My company? What are you talking about? You're just an employee. You'll see. Oh, and don't worry about the divorce paper. I'll take care of it myself. And so, I left the house, headed straight to the main street, and immediately made a call. Yes, can you come right now? 10 minutes later, I got into the limousine that came to pick me up. Where to for now? The city hall, I guess. Understood. I headed to the city hall and submitted the divorce paper. There, I had already signed it in the car. I wanted to get divorced as quickly as possible. I didn't want anything to do with such trash. After that, I drove off to a certain place. When I decide to do something, I act on it immediately. That's our family motto. I drove straight to the company. Entering the president's office, I sat down in the chair. Thank you for having me, I'm Maya. Sorry for the sudden meeting, but there's something urgent I need to discuss with you, President Hansen. What might that be about? The project we've been progressing on. Ah, yes. I've entrusted that to Leo. I'm aware of that. Ah, right. You two are married. About that project, it's off. What did you say? And all current contracts with you will be terminated. That would bankrupt our company. That's unfortunate, but it's due to your employees' actions. What? Please bring Leo with you to our house tomorrow at 11. What do you mean by that? You'll understand tomorrow. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. I hold no grudge against President Hansen, but this was necessary. I'm using it for my revenge against Leo. After all, I have a trump card. The next day, I waited in the president's office for Leo and the others to arrive. President, the two guests have arrived. Let them in. They entered, and upon seeing me, Leo froze. I nearly laughed, holding back as hard as I could. Welcome. Why are you here? Because I'm the president of this company. I kept it a secret from President Hansen. It would have been too troublesome if you knew. And about the contract, right? First, please look at this. I handed over the envelope my father had left me. Is this true? Everything was researched by my father, Leo. You've done something unforgivable. Leo had been using bribes and illegal methods to secure contracts. All his actions were documented. I can't imagine how much time my father spent gathering this information. Such a fool. Damn, that old man went this far. But I have the right to inherit, don't I? It wouldn't be fair to my father otherwise. First off, you have no right to inherit what I've inherited. There's supposed to be a division of assets. I know that much. That's where you're wrong. You're not entitled to anything in the division of assets. You should have studied more. Where did I go wrong? From the beginning. Leo's father was a president but passed away, reportedly by suicide. The reason was the cancellation of a deal by a certain company. This was something my father discovered. Importantly, that company's name was almost identical to ours. I explained this to Leo. So your entire premise was a mistake? That's a lie. My mother told me about it. That can't be. What if that story was wrong? By the way, there's no record of any deal with your father's company in our past. For what purpose did I do all this? You've caused trouble for many people. Because of your actions, you need to take full responsibility. Wait a minute, President Hansen. I'll leave the rest to you. Depending on how things go, I might reconsider the termination of our contracts. Okay, understood. I will address this immediately. Goodbye, then. And don't ever show your face to me again. Bye. Afterwards, Leo was led out of the president's office by President Hansen. I never thought it would come to this, but how did my father figure something was amiss? Now I can't ask him. However, I felt somewhat relieved. Shortly after, I received a call from President Hansen. I understand. Thank you for handling this. As a result, Leo was fired. Not only that, but it turned out he had been embezzling company funds for bribes and such. They are now preparing to sue him. It seems like a fair response. Meanwhile, I received a call from Leo. Everything you said was right about what? I talked to my mother again. It seems there was a misunderstanding. My father did not leave a suicide note. I see. Can I ask you something? Was encouraging my father to drink also a part of your plan? Yes, I see. I'm sorry. Your apologies are too late now. From now on, you're on your own. I understand. And just so you know, I'm not supporting you. This is just sarcasm. Fall into hell quickly. I hung up the phone and deleted all his contact information. I had almost forgotten, but the back of a photo in Leo's study was marked with the name of his revenge target in red pen. The whole thing was a mistake, but to think I was also a target. Sitting on the sofa in the president's office, I remembered the words written in the envelope from my father. Maya, you are my pride and joy. Do as you wish. I believe in you. I had never been told such things before. To ensure my father can rest easy in heaven, I will protect the company he left behind with my life.
Hello everyone. My name is Jennifer. I didn't grow up rich, but I still managed to get a job and get married. My husband's name is Max, and he works at a fancy hotel. I thought my life would be a fairy tale, but things didn't turn out that way. My childhood home wasn't wealthy, we didn't have a lot of money, but I don't blame my parents at all. They gave up nice things for me, took me to fun places, and taught me about different cultures. Maybe they loved geography, but as a kid, I often thought they were trying too hard for me. I didn't want my parents to worry about me anymore, so I decided to start working right after middle school. My mom would say, "You should at least finish high school, it might be hard to find a job without it." My dad would agree, saying, "Yes, we have enough money saved to send you to high school." I was really happy about how my parents felt, but more than that, I wanted to make life easier for them as soon as possible. It's okay, the sooner I start working, the sooner I'll start earning more, I said, not very sure of myself. But, like my parents said, there was no guarantee I'd find a job. During that time, I had a friend named Jessica, who had moved here from another country when we started middle school. Her family wasn't rich either, which might be why we got along so well and always hung out together. Jessica could speak some English, so we managed to communicate. Without realizing it, I started learning Spanish just by talking with her. By the time I was in ninth grade, I could speak Spanish pretty well. Maybe it was my Spanish skills that helped because, surprisingly, a travel agency decided to hire me. They saw value in my ability to speak Spanish. Jessica and I, having both left school after middle school, started working and gradually lost touch. I focused on my job, determined to earn money. Time passed quickly, and soon I was 26 years old. I often used a hotel lounge for work. It was a fancy but cozy place, and the snacks and coffee were reasonably priced. We held our meetings there with the staff. The waiter working there at the time was Max. The hotel hosted many foreigners, so he spoke Spanish too. Sometimes, I would be there with foreign guests. Maybe because we both spoke Spanish, we connected right away. Max started a conversation, and before I knew it, we were in a whirlwind romance that led to marriage. For a girl from a poor family, getting married was a big deal. I expected to start an exciting new life, however, reality was quite different. When we were getting married, Max had a request. If it's okay with you, Jennifer, I'd like us to live at my family home. His father had passed away a few years ago, and he was worried about his mother living alone. Her energy levels were dropping, and having someone around to help her seemed like a good idea. Since I worked remotely, Max thought it would be convenient for me to stay home, look after his mother, and handle the household chores. On the flip side, Max often worked long hours and wasn't home much. With his rare days off, having me, a home-based worker, around must have seemed like a good arrangement to him. But I couldn't agree to it right away. When I first visited Max's family home to introduce myself before our marriage, his mother reacted strangely after asking about my education. "Jennifer, which university did you graduate from?" she asked. When I honestly replied, "Well, I didn't go to college. I only finished middle school," my mother-in-law went silent and just looked at me. Her expression showed she looked down on me. "Oh, middle school. Well, she said, eyeing me with disdain. Because of this, I thought living with her might not be easy, so I mentioned my concerns to Max casually. "Max, do you think your mom has some doubts about me?" I asked him. He chuckled a bit and replied, "Nah, that's not true. Mom trusts me, and I'm sure she doesn't have any bad feelings toward my wife either." His words made me think maybe I was worrying too much. Max also promised that if any issues arose, he would talk to his mother for me. With that reassurance, I agreed to move in with his family. But once I started living there, things weren't as smooth as I'd hoped. It was a harsh reality check. Whenever Max and I visited his family's house, his mother would speak to him with such warmth. "Max, thank you. I'm so grateful you're living with me," she would say, and Max would respond, "Of course, I knew it would help you out." They seemed like such a close mother and son. But towards me, my mother-in-law's attitude was completely different, cold, even. "Well, Jennifer, just make sure you don't hold Max back," she'd say emotionlessly, as if she were giving orders to a servant. It was clear she still looked down on me. But at that moment, Max stood up for me. "Don't worry, Jennifer is doing a great job working too," he said. However, when I mentioned this, my mother-in-law briefly looked stern, a detail I didn't miss. I figured I should talk to Max if things ever got troublesome and decided to handle it my way. We were family, after all, and I didn't want any tension between us. That's how we started living together, but reality didn't bend in a favorable direction. One day, as I was working on my computer as usual, my mother-in-law burst into my room and said angrily, "Hey, Jennifer, when are you going to clean my room? It needs to be done by 10 a.m. every day." I was surprised because I had never heard of such a rule before. Sure, I agreed to do household chores, but we never discussed to what extent. If she had just told me kindly from the beginning, that would have been fine. After all, I have my own job and can't be available all the time. However, arguing wouldn't be mature, so I quickly finished my work, apologized, and started cleaning her room. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was just relaxing in the living room, watching TV and eating snacks. Max had mentioned concerns about his mother's health, but she seemed well enough to clean her own room. I had imagined she might have difficulty walking, but she was more lively than I thought. Once the cleaning was done, she immediately ordered, "Now, start making dinner, and I like it plain. I won't tolerate anything too strong." She even told me to go shopping for ingredients right away. I thought it was too early to start cooking, but I decided to get it done and return to my work. When I got back from shopping, my mother-in-law was still relaxing. It was hard not to feel annoyed, but I chose to hold back and just finish what needed to be done. I thought maybe she was testing me, hoping she'd understand in time. But that hope lingered for months. There were days when she complained about me being just 5 minutes late with the laundry or that the bathtub wasn't cleaned perfectly, nitpicking to an almost obsessive degree. Before I knew it, I ended up doing all the chores around the house while my mother-in-law just lounged around. Honestly, if she had the energy to nitpick, she could very well do some chores herself. I started to worry that if this continued, it would start affecting my job too. That was the last thing I needed. So, I decided to wait until the evening to talk to Max about it. Once my mother-in-law had gone to bed, I told him everything. "Hey, I think your mom just doesn't like me. I'm getting so tired of being constantly criticized," I said. But Max just chuckled and said, "Come on, that can't be true. Mom's a kind person. There won't be any issues as long as Jennifer doesn't do anything strange. Please try to get along with her." He didn't believe me. Maybe it's because she's always doting on him and never complains to him. In fact, when Max is around, my mother-in-law says, "Jennifer, why don't we take a break and have some tea?" But even knowing that, there's a limit to my patience with this kind of life. I spend all day doing household chores and end up having to work on my job at night. To be honest, my trust in Max is starting to fade. If nothing changes, I might just collapse from all the stress. Then, in the midst of all this, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "Jennifer, I'll be away for about a week, about 3 months from now, so make sure you keep the house in order, okay?" She sprang this on me out of nowhere. When I asked what was going on, she said, "Max suggested we go on an overseas vacation." That's my boy, always knowing. I was thrilled at the thought of traveling abroad. I couldn't wait. But when my mother-in-law dropped the bomb about the vacation, I was shocked. Max hadn't mentioned a word of it to me, and it seemed like I was being left out, expected to stay behind and manage the house. I needed to talk to Max about this right away, so I brought it up that night. His response was surprising. "Oh, Mom already told you. But you're coming too, right?" It turned out we had misunderstood each other. It seems my mother-in-law had lied to me. Even if Max wanted me to go, I couldn't possibly enjoy a trip with her. In frustration, I told him, "I don't want to go. I can't possibly have a good time with your mother." Then Max completely lost it and lashed out. "Jennifer, what the heck are you saying? How long are you going to keep up this childish nonsense? I won't allow you to speak ill of Mom like that. You better reflect on this. It's a vacation abroad, for crying out loud, and I want to enjoy it too," he retorted. I was completely shocked. I couldn't believe Max wouldn't trust me this much. Staying in that house had become nothing but agony for me. To prove to Max that I was telling the truth, I decided to take action. The next day, since Max was off work, the 3 of us had breakfast together. That's when I confronted my mother-in-law. "You're trying to leave me out of the trip abroad, aren't you?" I asked. My mother-in-law replied defiantly, "Oh, did I say that, Jennifer? If you want to come, just come along, right?" But Max interrupted, "Hey, Jennifer, don't you understand yet? Apologize to Mom. Why are you being so defiant? You're not a child anymore. Despite my desire to clear things up and make Max understand, my mother-in-law insulted me in the worst way. Well, maybe Jennifer should just stay home, right? It's too early for someone like you to travel abroad. You won't appreciate the experience with your lack of education. Besides, lazing around at home every day without working, do you even deserve to go abroad? You know it, don't you? She sneered. I was shocked that she still believed I was unemployed. I've explained my job to her multiple times. Even during our greetings, I've told her what I do, haven't I? I confronted her, but she just looked down on me. What job? Remote work. Don't joke with me. You're just playing on the computer at home. It's been getting on my nerves every day. There's no way you're making money with that. You're just stealing Max's earnings, she blurted out. That really made me angry, but before I could respond, she went even further. I have Max, and that's enough for me. Max can speak Spanish and works at a renowned hotel. There's no need to waste his earnings on a woman like you, uneducated and unemployed. A bottom feeder like you should just leave as soon as possible. She continued, just kept going. After all her harsh words, I looked at Max, hoping he would understand. But his response was unexpected. Well, I can understand how Mom feels. Maybe Jennifer needs to cool off a bit, he said nonchalantly, as if he were fed up with me. At that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't endure being treated like this by both the mother and son any longer. Even though my mother-in-law told me to leave, I still wanted to confirm. Am I really supposed to leave? I asked, laughing. She replied, of course. Leave as soon as you can. We don't need bottom feeders like you around. I said, understood, and began preparing to move out. I simply nodded to the two of them and left the house. As I was leaving, my mother-in-law called after me with a sneer. Enjoy your poor life as it suits a bottom feeder like you, she mocked. But they didn't realize that consequences would follow their actions. About 3 months after I left the house, around the time they were scheduled to go on their trip abroad, my mother-in-law called me. Jennifer, I finally reached you. What's going on? She sounded quite frantic. First, I replied, I'm surprised you managed to call this number. She said, of course, I tried several times and couldn't get through. I even called your parents' house to get your new number. I had informed my parents that if either Max or my mother-in-law called, they should call back at this number. What's wrong? I asked, with a tone of concern. She replied, panicked, what's wrong? We're getting all sorts of collection letters. Help me out, I didn't know about any of this. Well, that's expected. You haven't been paying the utilities, have you? I simply answered. My mother-in-law seemed lost in her thoughts. I absolutely thought Max was covering our living expenses. To find out you were paying for everything, why didn't you tell me? I had no idea you were making that much money. It's a bit late to bring this up now, I said, though perhaps Max had finally told her the truth. That's right, I had already started my own business using expertise I gained from the travel agency where I used to work. My business had grown to the point of earning $20 million, being widely accepted around the world. What probably shocked my mother-in-law even more was Max's income. Just because he worked in a lounge at a well-known hotel didn't mean he was making a lot of money. If anything, Max was just an average worker on the lower end of the pay scale, and speaking Spanish at that hotel was nothing special. There were many Spanish speakers there. Even if he could speak it, it wasn't anything remarkable. There was no way his income could cover the living expenses for 3 people. In reality, just making ends meet for himself was all he could manage. It's ridiculous that she hadn't realized until a collection notice came that I was the one paying all the living expenses for my husband's family. But the more I listened to my mother-in-law, the more shocking facts came to light. The reason why she insisted on me living with them wasn't to keep an eye on her, it was because she had been living off my father-in-law's wealth. Blinded by a temporary influx of cash, she had spent lavishly until there was nothing left. That's when she turned to Max, presuming he was earning well. But Max knew his income was low, and he was somewhat aware of my earnings, which is why he turned to me for help. Hearing this only confirmed how irresponsible they were, but their irresponsibility didn't stop there. By the way, are you managing to make the car payments? My mother-in-law exclaimed, raising her voice. Exactly. Both Max and I have bills piling up since you moved out. I've been receiving more and more credit card statements addressed to both of us. The amounts due each month kept increasing, and before I knew it, they amounted to quite a sum. Their level of luxury spending was beyond me. I have no idea how they were spending without paying the living expenses, she added, sounding exasperated. Max's bills had surpassed his salary, and my mother-in-law hadn't stopped her old habits of lavish spending. It seemed they had both gotten themselves into debt, now totaling over $440,000. What's even more shocking is they thought Max would somehow manage it, if it was just a bit of debt, as my mother-in-law put it. And Max thought I would take care of it if things got tough. The level of dependence in grown adults was appalling. Beyond exasperation, I was starting to feel the danger. So when my mother-in-law brazenly said, "So, Jennifer, you can sort this out for us, right?" I was astonished by her audacity. I made it clear to her. After everything that's happened, you're asking for help now. There's no way I'm helping. That's when Max suddenly took the phone. "Hey, Jennifer, you're my wife. You have a duty to help us out. Do something. We can't pay this off," he demanded. I couldn't believe their nerve, but I did offer him a glimmer of mercy. "So, you want to come over?" "I might consider it if you do," I replied. He was immediately enthusiastic. "Oh yeah. You'll let us stay, and you'll sort out the money. Then let's do that. Where's your place?" "I'll head there right now," he said eagerly. I had to be honest. "Well, if you can make it, I'm in Hawaii right now. I have a vacation home here." Both Max and my mother-in-law couldn't hide their shock. "What? You mean Hawaii?" "We can't afford to go there right now," Max panicked. I calmly replied, "Weren't you planning to travel abroad? Just swing by Hawaii, your mother would love it. And you did ask my family for my phone number, right? Didn't you realize it was an international number? Oh, and don't forget the cost of this call. It adds up if you're on for a long time," I added, making my point clear. I said, "If we get divorced, I might think about helping with the money too." Max quickly replied, "All right. I got it. Let's just get divorced first, then." It seemed like Max realized his debts were something he couldn't trade for anything else. So, I told him I'd deliver the divorce papers once I got back to California and ended the call. About a week later, I returned to California, made sure to have the divorce papers properly written up, and the divorce went through without a hitch. Max looked quite worn out, so I guess he'd been living pretty lean these last few days. He mentioned something at that time. It turns out he had been counting on my money for the overseas trip as well. Hearing that didn't even surprise me anymore. They probably thought I would pay off their debts, but of course, I had no intention whatsoever of doing that. What I proposed was, first of all, for both of them to stop living so extravagantly, and then for Max and my mother-in-law to work hard. I told them that if they did, they could eventually pay off the debt and at least manage the basics. When Max heard this, he lashed out. "Hey, that's not what you promised. You were supposed to think about the debt." But I replied, "That's why I did you a favor by thinking of a way for you both to handle your debt repayment. So, good luck." Once you can afford to travel abroad again, I'll invite you to my Hawaii villa, I said with a touch of sarcasm and left their place. Afterward, they both seemed to be working themselves to the bone from dawn till dusk, barely scraping by. It was probably a good lesson for them since they'd had it easy until now. On a different note, I heard that Jessica also built a house in Hawaii. I had a reunion with her after so long. She took up a job that took her around the world after graduating from middle school and now seems to be a company president, just like me. She had her parents come over to the house she bought, and they've been living it up together. So, I called my parents over from California, and we started living here. Now, I sometimes visit Jessica's place. We both feel blessed to be able to give back to our parents and encourage each other as we work hard at our jobs.
Welcome to my channel. Support our channel by subscribing. Your subscription helps us grow and create more intriguing content like this. Now let's dive into today's story. Title: I Found My Brother's Secret Messages, the shocking truth behind his affair with my wife. Jake Matthews had always been the kind of man who believed that hard work paid off. At 32, he had a steady job as a software engineer and a beautiful wife, Ava. Their life in the quiet suburban town of Fairview was the epitome of what many people would consider success. They were a power couple, Jake with his sharp analytical mind and Ava, a talented fashion designer with an eye for creativity. Together, they had been married for 6 years, a bond built on love, mutual respect, and an occasional night of laughter over dinner. But behind the calm exterior of their marriage, Jake had begun to notice small things that didn't quite add up. Little cracks in the foundation that, at first, seemed insignificant. Ava had always been independent, but recently there was a cold distance between them. She was spending more time away from home, attending late-night design meetings or visiting clients, as she would call them. Her phone always seemed to be buzzing with messages, but whenever Jake asked to take a look, she quickly brushed it off. It wasn't that he was overly suspicious. Jake trusted Ava with all his heart. But there was a nagging feeling that wouldn't go away. Ethan Matthews, Jake's younger brother, had also moved back in with them recently after his relationship with his ex-girlfriend fell apart. At 28, Ethan was still trying to figure out what he wanted in life. He was charming, easygoing, and always had a smile on his face. He quickly became a fixture in their home, often joining Jake and Ava for dinner or movie nights. His presence brought an energy to the house that Jake couldn't help but appreciate, even if he sometimes felt that Ethan's carefree nature rubbed off on Ava in ways he didn't quite understand. Little did Jake know, the storm was brewing right under his nose. One evening, Jake was at home after a long day at work. Ava had texted him earlier that she was going to be late for dinner, so he decided to relax and catch up on some work. His laptop was open in front of him, but his mind was elsewhere. He had just gotten off the phone with a friend who had casually mentioned seeing Ava out with Ethan at a local cafe. They had seemed close during the encounter. It wasn't uncommon for Ethan and Ava to hang out, but something about the way his friend had described it made Jake uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something more was going on. As Jake was lost in his thoughts, he noticed something strange. Ava's phone was lying on the coffee table, unlocked and displaying an incoming text message. The notification read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He knew it wasn't his message. It was from someone named E. Curiosity gripped him. The message was innocuous enough, but the word baby stood out in a way that made his stomach churn. Without thinking too much about it, he picked up the phone and quickly read through the rest of the conversation. The text exchange was intimate, filled with playful banter and promises to meet up soon. As Jake scrolled further, he was hit with the sickening realization that the person on the other end of the conversation was none other than Ethan. The texts weren't just innocent. They were flirtatious, suggestive, and full of promises for secret rendezvous. There were no details about the affair itself, but Jake didn't need them. His heart pounded in his chest and his mind raced. How had he not noticed? How long had this been going on? Jake sat back in his chair, the phone trembling in his hands. He felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on him. He wanted to confront Ava, to demand an explanation, but something inside him told him to wait. Jake didn't sleep that night. He spent hours poring over the messages, trying to make sense of them, but no amount of rational thought could ease the turmoil in his chest. He needed answers, and he needed them now. The next morning, he waited until he was alone with Ethan in the kitchen. Ava had gone out for a meeting, leaving the two brothers alone. Ethan was making coffee, humming a tune as he went about his morning routine. Jake stood in the doorway, his fists clenched at his sides. "Jake, we need to talk." Ethan looked up, a smile quickly fading from his face as he saw the seriousness in Jake's expression. "Ethan, what's up, man? Everything okay?" Jake, "I found your messages with Ava." Ethan's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his face before he quickly masked it with a casual grin. Ethan, "Wait. What?" "Jake, I don't know what you're talking about." Jake didn't wait for more lies. He pulled out his phone, showing Ethan the conversation. Ethan's face showing Ethan the conversation. Ethan's face drained of color as he saw the proof right in front of him. "Jake, you've been seeing her, haven't you?" Ethan, "Jake, Jake," cutting him off. "Don't lie to me. I saw the texts. I saw everything. How long has this been going on?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find words. Ethan, "Jake, I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just..." Jake, "Don't even say it. You've been sleeping with my wife behind my back." Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but the words never came. Instead, he dropped his head in shame, unable to look his brother in the eye. Jake didn't know what to do with himself. His mind was reeling. This wasn't just about a betrayal from his wife. It was his own brother, the man who had grown up with him, shared countless memories with him, and who he had trusted above all others. Ethan tried to apologize, tried to explain, but Jake couldn't hear it. There was nothing that could undo the damage. The truth was out, and there was no going back. Later that night, Jake sat across from Ava at dinner, his heart heavy with the weight of what he knew. She seemed distant, not noticing the storm brewing in Jake's eyes. Jake, coldly, "Ava, I know everything. I know about you and Ethan." Ava looked up, her face paling. Ava, defensive, "What are you talking about?" Jake placed his phone on the table, showing her the same messages he had shown Ethan. Ava's face twisted in shock, her eyes welling up with tears as she saw the truth laid bare. Ava, choking on her words. "Jake, I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear. It was a mistake." Jake, "A mistake? You've been sleeping with my brother for months. Don't you dare try to call it a mistake." Jake's emotions were a storm of rage, sadness, and confusion. But one thing was clear. He couldn't just let this go. Ava had shattered the trust in their marriage, and Ethan had broken the bond between them as brothers. He needed to make them understand the weight of what they had done. But Jake wasn't the type to act impulsively. He was smart, calculated. He knew that revenge wasn't about immediate violence or confrontation. It was about making them feel the consequences of their actions. After days of brooding, Jake came up with a plan. He would expose Ethan for the man he truly was, and he would make sure that everyone knew the truth. Jake wasn't interested in keeping the family intact. He wanted justice. Jake posted on social media, crafting a message that was vague enough not to outright attack anyone, but clear enough to reveal Ethan's affair with Ava. He shared screenshots of their texts, without names or dates, but leaving enough information for people to figure it out. The response was immediate and brutal. The social media post spread like wildfire. People started connecting the dots, and soon, both Ethan and Ava were the subject of whispers and public ridicule. Ethan's friends, once loyal, started distancing themselves from him, while Ava's clients and colleagues expressed their disappointment. The world had found out about the affair, and the shame was palpable. Ethan, unable to face the public backlash, tried to salvage what little was left of his dignity, but it was too late. He was ostracized, his reputation tarnished. Ava, too, faced the fallout in her professional life. The public was harsh, but the pain that both of them felt was nothing compared to the deep wound Jake carried. Months passed, and Jake started to rebuild his life. It wasn't easy. The pain lingered, but he found solace in the fact that he had faced the truth head-on and that the world knew what had happened. Ava eventually left, unable to repair the relationship with Jake. Ethan, too, disappeared from his life, his once vibrant personality now a shadow of the man he had been. Jake's life was far from perfect, but he was finally free. He had learned that sometimes the hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was finding the strength to move on. Jake sat on the balcony of his apartment. The city skyline stretched out before him. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow on the world below. Sometimes, the truth is a heavy burden to carry, but in the end, it's always better to face it than to let it fester in silence. Jake's journey wasn't easy, but he found a way to move forward, learning from his pain and embracing the lessons life had taught him. Host, smiling softly. What do you think of Jake's decision? Would you have handled things differently? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.
Hello, hi, sweetheart. It's wonderful to hear your voice again. I have to admit, it was quite a challenge finding a new phone number for either of you. So, how are things going on your end? Linda asked softly, attempting to conceal her excitement while masking the fear and sadness she truly felt. Stacy hesitated momentarily before opting for caution. New phone, who's this? Stacy interjected. Stacy, for goodness sake, it's me, your mom. I apologize for not calling sooner, but I hoped you'd recognize your mother's voice after all these years, Linda replied, her tone tinged with frustration. Stacy smiled faintly. She immediately recognized her mother's voice, but chose to proceed with extreme caution given the circumstances. Her carefulness also allowed her to address her absent mother's emotional absence without appearing rude. Oh, hi, Mom, she finally responded. You caught me off guard, and I was just being cautious. I don't want to fall prey to some telephone stalker. Stacy paused again, contemplating before objecting to her mother's claim of loving and raising her for over 17 years. She maintained her composure, but wasn't willing to forego expressing polite disagreement. Mom, I don't believe the past 3 years qualify as your care or affection. I was almost 14 when you left, and this call marks the first contact from you in 3 years. I'm already 17, and I've been without your maternal love for a long time. Linda sighed heavily. I'm truly sorry, Stacy. Back then, everything was incredibly challenging, and I felt I had no choice but to leave. But let's not dwell on that. I genuinely called to check on you and possibly speak with your siblings if they're around. Now that things have settled, I intend to be more present for you. I hope we can reconnect, sweetheart, and you can enjoy the benefits of having a wealthy mother. With Frank and I married, there's much I can do for all my children, you, Rachel, and Josh. Our life now is far better than it was with your father. Don't misunderstand, darling. Your dad is a good man, but he couldn't provide the luxuries Frank does now. He pampers me daily, and I adore it. Linda's voice brimmed with enthusiasm. Now, I want to show you kids what real life is about, the way it's meant to be. And I'll also make up for those challenging years when we struggled due to your father's modest income. Hopefully, this will alleviate the guilt of leaving you abruptly. By this point, Stacy could barely contain her anger, simmering with resentment. She deeply loved her father, Ed Mercer, and admired him for shouldering the responsibilities of single parenthood and enduring the heartache. When Linda departed, Ed had to step up as a single parent, raising 2 daughters, one grappling with teenage issues the other just 10, alongside a wild 20-year-old son. Stacy also took immense pride in her father's transformation of their lives following her mother's departure. Prior to leaving, Linda emptied all the bank accounts, plunging the family into a financial crisis worse than Stacy could recall. At 14, young Stacy assumed the role of a homemaker, striving to assist her family's survival. United, the father and children endured a challenging period lasting over 8 months. Then, life became more manageable as her father enacted significant changes, and now, it's entirely wonderful. It would have been quite easy for Stacy to simply blame the main source of their suffering, her mother. In her 14th year, Stacy's well-known fiery temper lay in wait, ready to pounce. Suddenly, Stacy experienced a wave of utter calmness, comprehending how to conduct herself and what she needed to do in a conversation with her mother. And it was marvelous. If she had confronted Linda at that moment, her mother would undoubtedly have hung up, and Stacy might never have reconnected with her. It wouldn't have benefited anyone, and Stacy truly desired to maintain a relationship with her mother, despite her numerous mistakes. Embracing the feeling of calmness, Stacy decided how to proceed. She would have voiced her perspective, highlighting her mother's errors, yet simultaneously preserving the opportunity for the continuation of the relationship between the children and their mother. Yes, it was the correct approach. The young woman grinned broadly and suggested to Stacy that she might have just learned a significant life lesson. She excitedly told her mother about her stunning appearance and promised to send a picture using her phone's camera, asking her not to hang up. Stacy positioned herself in front of the mirror on her bedroom closet door, sunlight streaming through the window as it was around 4 o'clock in the mid-June evening. She smiled brightly into the mirror, showcasing her wheat gold hair, styled in an elegant updo, and her full-length lavender evening dress, which elegantly hugged her feminine figure. The floor-length dress was complemented by long white gloves ending just above her elbows, symbolizing Stacy's transformation from an awkward girl into a mature young lady. She took a couple of pictures, selected the best one, and promptly sent the selfie to her mother's cell phone. Impatiently, she asked if her mother received the photo and urged her to share her thoughts. A long pause followed, during which Linda reflected on the impact of the past 3 years on her blossoming daughter. Linda expressed her amazement at Stacy's beauty, struggling to find the right words as she fought back tears and a lump in her throat. She then expressed how much she missed Stacy and acknowledged her daughter's immense growth, questioning her own actions. Despite Linda's confused murmuring, Stacy proceeded. She mentioned how stunning Rachel would be and went to her younger sister's room, where she found Rachel putting the final touches on her long, thick, honey-brown hair. With an elegant updo framing her face, Rachel's hair cascaded down in gentle curls. Her large blue-gray eyes and soft features captivated many. Rachel's face was strikingly beautiful, with her slightly upturned nose and dimpled smile adding to her charm. Like Stacy, Rachel was dressed in an evening gown, exuding delicate elegance, albeit in a more understated manner compared to her older sister's attire. "Hey, Rach, come on, pose for a photo. Mom's on the line and I'll send her your picture," Stacy said, circling around her sister to find the perfect angle to capture Rachel. Assisting her was a woman around 35, also donned in an evening gown designed to make a lasting impression. This woman exuded a regal beauty that turned heads wherever she went. She noticed the smartphone aimed at her and Rachel and started to step out of the frame, but Stacy intervened, gesturing for her to stay put. "No, Janice, stay right there. I want you in the photo too," Stacy insisted. Rachel, still a bit surprised, eventually rolled her eyes and, cupping her hands around her mouth like a megaphone, shouted towards the phone, "Hello, ma'am. Can't chat now, but let's catch up later." Moving around the room, Stacy snapped several shots of Rachel and Janice before signaling they were done. "All set, ladies. I'll pick the best one and send it off." After a pause, Stacy held the phone to her ear and exclaimed, "I bet you wouldn't recognize Rachel now. I mean, Mom, Rach even has curves." Rachel blushed and retorted, "Stacy, you're such a dork. Be quiet." But a shy smile crept onto her face as the other women giggled at her playful embarrassment, prompting Stacy to refocus on the phone. "So, what do you think, Mom?" Linda struggled to find the words, clearly amazed. "My goodness, I'm speechless, honey. You both look stunning. You've grown so much and are so beautiful. I'm incredibly proud of both you and Rachel. I wish I could be there beside you right now." Linda kept pulling the phone away from her ear to look at the photos of her daughters, whom she missed dearly. Her maternal heart ached with longing and regret. She hastily wiped her teary eyes, focusing on the details of the pictures. Listen, Stacy, why are you both dressed up like that? You're not both going to prom, are you? She asked, perplexed. Stacy had successfully piqued her mom's interest and was now poised to flaunt it. No, Mom, it's even better than prom. Remember that annual soiree you were always envious of but never got invited to? That grandiose summer evening gala hosted by Sedgwick and McTaggart? Linda immediately recalled. Yes, of course I do. That ball was always the social event of the year. Gosh, I'd give anything to attend that reception. Only the most influential and glamorous people in the entire state get invited. Linda's voice carried a wistful tone. I've always longed for the chance to don a beautiful evening gown and mingle with the social elite. It would be a dream come true. Linda sighed sentimentally before snapping back to reality. Oh my goodness. Did you and Rachel land jobs as hostesses or waitresses at that party? Wow, this is incredible. I'm so proud of both of you. Just imagine, my daughters will be there at the reception mingling with all those high society folks, Linda exclaimed, marveling at the picture that unfolded before her. No, Mom. Rachel and I aren't working as staff. We're invited guests. Stacy shared with her mother the secret they had with Rachel, brimming with pride and excitement. And what's more, we'll be seated at the main table because Dad is the guest of honor at the event. It's a surprise for him, but the organizers will give him special recognition. Isn't that super cool? I'll even be one of those taking part in the ceremony. Oh, my Mom, I'm just, nervous, but at the same time incredibly excited. Linda was utterly taken aback. What? You must be joking, right? Stacy, honey, you've got to be joking. Why would a humble cost control clerk be invited to such an esteemed event? And as the guest of honor, no less? Huffing, that's just not something that happens in real life. Okay, come on, honey, admit it, you're just pulling my leg, right? Well, yes, of course, Mom, the eldest daughter chuckled. Of course. Rachel and I dress to the nines every day just to await your call and deliberately tease you. Let's be realistic, Mom. A lot has changed since you left us. We were in immense pain. No, we were all utterly devastated. But Dad managed to bring us all together, even Josh, and somehow built a new life for us without you. Perhaps I should catch you up on what's happened since you left. We need to do this quickly because the limo with Fona and Josh should be back. She glanced at her watch. In about 15 minutes, and then we'll all need to leave. Stacy took a deep breath to quell her anger before recounting their life after. Mom, Dad was practically shattered when he found out about you and some old guy in bed together. You disappeared right after he confronted you about it. Honestly, I think you were planning to leave anyway. You just had to move up the date a bit. At this juncture, Linda interrupted her daughter's story, whispering, Sorry, Stacy. I didn't realize you knew about what went down between your dad and me. But yeah, after he found out, I felt I had to split. What was the use of sticking around? He even had photos of us. Frank and I decided to ditch the city and shack up in his Manhattan apartment, and we've been there since. Stacy, I'm sorry your dad decided to spill the beans to you. If you want to know, I think it was pretty messed up to drag you kids into this mess. Mom! Unable to hold back, the girl yelled, stomping her foot in frustration. This is, well, total crap. Stacy then tried to rein in her temper and the overwhelming emotions. She took a couple of deep breaths and then continued speaking clearly. Dad didn't spill anything to us. This. I told him about this. Who do you think took those photos, huh? Yeah, that's right, Mom. That day, Rachel and I came home and everything was quiet except for some weird noises from your room. I told Rachel to wait downstairs while I quietly went up to see what was up. When I saw you snapping pictures while lying on the bed, you quickly sent them to Dad. Then Rachel and I left to hang out with friends. Later, when we got back that evening, you were holed up in your room, crying. The next morning, you were gone. So the last image I have of my caring mother is her under some gross old man in Dad's room. Seriously, Mom, tell me I didn't need therapy to erase those ugly images from my mind. Thank goodness you two at least covered yourselves. Otherwise, I'd probably still be in therapy. I can't believe you're the one who betrayed me. Stacy, how could you do this? Linda exclaimed, a mix of frustration and indignation in her voice. I don't think now's the time or place to trade barbs about betrayal, Mom. That'd be quite an uneven match, don't you think? I could unleash my fire hose against your water pistol at any moment, if you catch my drift. And let's not forget what Rach and Josh might have to say about you too. So, do you want to recap the past 3 years or what? While talking to her mom on the phone, Stacy was inwardly surprised at how composed and rational she was handling the situation. She realized she had really grown and matured in the past few years. At that moment, Linda realized that to salvage any semblance of a relationship with her children in the future, she'd have to confront the harsh reality of responsibility for her actions and their repercussions. It won't be an easy feat. A few gifts and occasional meetings won't magically mend things. Something deeper is required. Her children must come to terms with the inevitable and adjust to life without her. Linda truly desired to understand how they were coping, but to do so, she must hear their feelings regarding her decisions and life choices. Did they all resent her? There's no escaping reality now. If she retreats, she'll likely lose them, possibly forever. However, if she intends to rebuild the relationship, she must acknowledge their emotions and allow their intense feelings to wash over her. Is she prepared for this? Was it all worth the pain she knew would inevitably follow? Linda gathered her resolve. Her voice softened with regret over the phone. Yes, Stacy, you're absolutely right. I suppose someday we'll have to sit down and thoroughly discuss all these matters. But for now, we must focus on restoring some semblance of communication. I reached out to reconnect with you, my children, and that's a good first step. Don't you think? Now let me hear about how your lives have unfolded. After Linda's departure, Stacy couldn't wait to update her mother on the family's journey since her absence. She began excitedly recounting, Mom, you won't believe what's happened. It's like something out of a novel or even a fairy tale. Anyway, after you left, Dad went through a rough patch for a few months. It was tough. Many times when Rachel and I returned from school, I'd have her wait outside while I checked inside, fearing I might find Dad. You know. Every phone call made me jump, fearing it might be the police, the hospital, or worse. I urged Josh to pull himself together, to stop drinking and partying, because I couldn't be the sole anchor of the family. I think he made efforts, but he struggled to provide real support eventually. One day, Dad began reading books about overcoming heartbreak, grief, and such. Often, at night, he'd lock himself in his room, and Rachel and I could hear the keys clicking on his computer keyboard. He poured his thoughts and feelings onto the screen, and I believe it helped him tremendously. Oh, and Mom, remember how overweight Dad was? Well, he started rising early to run, even dusting off the treadmill and weights, using them regularly. It seemed like he was pushing himself to embrace life again, which was uplifting to see. Stacy paused and thought for a moment, then said, I'm guessing you probably don't want to know all this stuff about Dad, but it's really important in the grand scheme of what I'm trying to explain to you about our lives. So I'm sorry if this isn't what you want to hear, but by the way, Dad looks pretty hot now. Even over the phone, it was clear that Stacy was smiling. No, it's okay, honey. I really needed to hear about this, but thank you for taking care of me and telling me about how everything happened for you. I really want to know how things are going with you, Rachel and Josh. Well, with Rachel, it's simple. After what happened, she seemed to shut down, retreat into herself, and remained in this sort of detached state for quite a long time. Now she's almost back to her old self, and you won't believe how well she's doing. A lot of it has to do with Janice. She and Rachel really became friends. Linda looked at the photo on her phone again and zoomed in, this time paying special attention to the woman who was helping Rachel get dressed. Okay, so who is this Janice you're talking about? Oh, sorry, Mom. Janice is Dad's girlfriend. Isn't she gorgeous? And she's so sweet. She is a former swimsuit model, but Janice is still involved in modeling. She really helped Rachel come out of her shell and now supports her desire to start a career in the modeling world. Stacy perked up, nearly jumping out of her bed when she remembered something about, by the way, Mom, you should definitely pick up a copy of last month's Teen Fashion World magazine. Rach is on the COVID, and she looks absolutely stunning. Recently, she has really become a very popular model. What? How? When did all this happen? First, your father hooked up with a girl half his age, and now she's selling your little sister to some dirty photographers. If only I knew what she was doing with the cheesecake photo one. Then I will bring charges against both your father and this Janet, or whatever her name is. The enraged Linda almost choked from the indignation that gripped her. Stacy held off on responding immediately to help calm the situation, then spoke softly to emphasize her point. Mom, Dad and Janice are extremely careful. They handle all of Rachel's and my modeling work with great caution. One of them is always present at our shoots, and they make sure the photographer signs a strict contract with Dad. According to the terms, not a single photo can be taken without Dad's permission. Do you truly believe Dad would approve anything remotely suggestive? He won't even let Rachel wear a swimsuit. And about Dad's girlfriend, as I mentioned, her name is Janice. She's 34, which means there's an 11-year age gap between her and Dad. It's actually much less of a difference compared to you and Frankie. How old is he, 100? Anyway, I'm not sure if they'll ever get married, but from what I see, they're very compatible. Janice has been a great support to him, and Dad seems genuinely happy. I've never seen him this content. That's the situation, Mom. I'm being honest about what I observe and feel. Frank is only 66, not as old as you seem to think, Stacy interjected, her displeasure evident. I'm just unsure if modeling is the right path for Rachel. I believe she'd benefit more from pursuing something more meaningful. Stacy bit her tongue to prevent herself from losing her temper and blurting out something regrettable. She turned away from her cell phone and took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. Afterward, she returned the cell phone to her ear and continued speaking, disregarding the interruption. Rachel's modeling career has really helped her, Mom. She's much less shy now and exudes confidence and composure that she didn't have before. She's finally discovered her true self, her capabilities, and what she's truly passionate about. Sometimes she even takes charge in the studio or suggests creative-themed poses for her shoots. Mom, let's be real. Rachel was never a standout student and always saw herself as a failure, thinking her future held nothing good. But now she's poised to become a top-tier fashion model before finishing high school, with a bank account even you'd be proud of. And yes, Mom, I said that. I also model, but it's not my passion. Rachel and I do fashion shows together, but I mainly serve as support, complementing Rachel's looks or showcasing different outfits. The best part? Rachel and I have grown close, helping each other out and collaborating. Plus, I'm making good money enough to save for college. Don't worry, I still enjoy school and maintain good grades. I'm even taking extra classes to graduate early for college. I still have an A average, but I'm a bit concerned about chemistry this year. It's a tough class, but I need to ace it for veterinary school. Stacy remembered something else and brightened up again, even giggling. Oh, Mom, you won't believe this. Rach and I get to keep some of the outfits from our shows and shoots, so now I have a really cool wardrobe. Can you imagine? I'm one of the most stylish girls in class now, not some geek. Many of the girls who used to think they were too cool are asking me for fashion tips, and some even want my autograph. Isn't it funny, albeit a bit nauseating? So, Mom, I'm almost popular. And the best part? Guys are starting to notice me, Stacy giggled. All this news greatly disturbed Linda, who had always struggled to achieve some level of recognition in society. She herself didn't know exactly what, but some kind of recognition. She left her family to pursue personal recognition, but it seemed her family members achieved success without her. What further aggravated the situation for Linda? They achieved such stunning success, seemingly effortlessly. Linda sighed heavily. Baby, I'm glad everything's going well with you and your sister. By the way, though I'm hesitant to ask, how's Josh? Is he okay? Stacy took a deep breath and glanced at the clock. Knowing Josh and Fauna would arrive soon, she didn't want to rush discussing Josh's situation, fearing she wouldn't have enough time. But feeling confident she could share Josh's update with her mother, Stacy continued. Well, Mom, surprisingly, Josh has turned things around. You know, he was quite wild even before you left. And after that, he continued drinking and partying even more with his friends. For a while, he completely lost control. Eventually, Dad got really angry and demanded he quit partying and either get a job or go back to school. Well, he told Dad off. So eventually, Dad kicked him out, telling him not to return until he found a job. Dad even had to call the cops a couple of times to get him out. Mother couldn't believe her ears. What? Your idiot father threw my son out? How dare he? I'll have Frank contact a lawyer and sue that scoundrel, Linda raged, clutching the phone and seething with anger. Well, good luck with that, Mom, Stacy said with a hint of irony. She knew her mother always favored Josh, letting him get away with anything, and Stacy knew Linda supported his antics by giving him money whenever he asked. In fact, she thought Josh was very lucky he never got into serious trouble. All this occurred a year and a half ago, Mom, and since then, Josh and Dad have reconciled. Josh relied on his friends for a while, but even they grew weary of supporting his laziness and kicked him out. He spent some time living on the streets, but eventually realized he didn't like that lifestyle, especially seeing us doing well. So, one day, Josh apologized to Dad and expressed his desire to come home. Dad maintained his get-a-job-first stance, so Josh found work on a roofing crew. After that, he returned home, but Dad insisted he contribute to living expenses to teach him responsibility. Stacy chuckled. It was amusing hearing him complain about his tough job and expenses, but Dad always said that's how the real world operates, and Josh needed to adapt. This continued until Fona entered the scene. Don't tell me Dad has a new girlfriend? Linda was indignant. Who's Fona? Stacy laughed. No, Mom. Fona is Dad's personal assistant. She's sharp-tongued and won't tolerate objections. Dad calls her his cool boss. Despite being only 22, she's competent and reliable. They met at a conference in Minneapolis. Fona approached him, shook his hand, and advised him to hire her for organizing trips, booking tickets, and managing expenses if he wanted real success. Impressed by her no-nonsense attitude, Dad hired Fona on the spot. Now she lives with us, and Dad jokes about having his own harem. It's hilarious, Stacy laughed. Fona has been crucial in Dad's career development. She's like my big sister, and we all adore her. Oh, Mom, Fona's a real stunner from Norway. She's 5'7", with a trendy haircut, short blonde hair, and piercing light blue eyes. Poor Josh fell for her immediately, but Fona made it clear she wouldn't date someone without direction. Suddenly, Josh had newfound motivation. Stacy's tone turned serious as she shared the latest about her brother. And now, the big news. Mom, brace yourself. 4 months ago, Josh enlisted in the Air Force and will soon head to language school in Monterey, California. Well, I think so. What language school? Russian. Linda gasped in shock. It was already beyond her comprehension. Chuckling quietly at her mother's reaction, Stacy remarked, "Isn't it wild?" Josh is currently stationed at Lackland Air Force Base, waiting for clearance. So, Dad asked him to come home and attend a party in his honor. Oh, and Fona's started treating him more gently, though she still won't admit she's with Josh. But we girls can tell she's fallen for him too. Fona's not seeing anyone else, and they spend hours on the phone whenever they can. Josh is so smitten. And get this, he plans to finish language school, go to college, earn a degree, and become an officer. Can you believe it, Mom? My always crazy brother, now a military officer. For those who knew him before, this sounds like utter nonsense. Love sure makes you do strange things, doesn't it, Mom? Stacy smiled, gesturing with her slender stiletto heel during their conversation about her brother's future plans. Suddenly, a baritone voice singing "The Impossible Dream" echoed in the background. Stacy laughed, leapt off the bed, and dashed into the hallway. "Mom, you've got to hear this!" she exclaimed into the phone, extending it towards the male voice. Simultaneously, female voices joined in with wolf howls and giggles. Then Rachel's laughter rang out. "Dad's singing my favorite song," Janice chimed in. "Don't quit your day job," Stacy teased. "Dad, why don't you take that act on the road? The bus leaves in 10 minutes. Ed's voice, filled with mock indignation, broke through the laughter of the girls. "Girls, you're eliminating me. No respect in my own family. I've had it. You're all off my Christmas list." Another burst of laughter, followed by a chorus of, "We love you, Daddy," and reassurance from the man. "They're back on the list," Stacy resumed her conversation. Returning to the phone, Stacy continued to giggle. "Dad's a riot. He sings when he's happy or nervous, and we always egg him on. It's our little game with him." That's all Linda could manage, unable to say more. Subconsciously, she hoped her family was still suffering without her, but seeing they were thriving, she fell silent, feeling somewhat dazed. Stacy picked up the thread of conversation. "Dad doesn't know he'll be the guest of honor tonight, but he's already a bit nervous. He and Jack McTaggart will play a couple of guitar duets with the band. You know how Dad is with his blues guitar, right? Since he and Jack became buddies, they've been jamming almost every week, strumming their guitars and sharing a few beers. Mom, you've got to hear their jokes about becoming rock stars soon. Ha, they're actually pretty good though. But they jam just for fun. Tonight's their first public gig, and I bet it'll be a blast. Just picture Dad in a tuxedo rocking out on stage." Stacy grinned, imagining the scene. Upon hearing this surprising news, Linda was taken aback once more. "Stacy, what are you saying? Your dad and John McTaggart are pals? Did I hear that right? John McTaggart? How? Why?" Stacy smiled inwardly with a hint of mischief. She knew her mother held the McTaggart family in high esteem for their wealth and influence. She also recalled her mother's dream of meeting them in person. Now Stacy's dad and Jack McTaggart not only met, but practically became best buddies. Stacy also appreciated that the affluent and renowned head of the family insisted that members of the Mercer family address him simply as Jack, rather than the formal Mr. McTaggart. In person, Jack turned out to be quite pleasant and played a pivotal role in Ed's writing career's early stages. "Yes, Mom, the same John, or Jack as his close pals call him, McTaggart," confirmed Stacy. "It all began when Dad wrote a couple of articles about surviving and rebuilding life after a traumatic event, like losing everything when your cheating spouse leaves you for someone else. When a couple of small magazines bought his articles for publication, Dad was over the moon. Then I think Jack read Dad's articles, contacted him, and asked him to deliver a motivational speech at a McTaggart Corporation employee meeting. Dad nearly had a heart attack when he got Jack's offer. He prepared a talk based on his articles and delivered it at the meeting. The speech was a hit, and he received lots of warm feedback and gratitude, leading Jack to hire him again, this time to speak at the company's annual shareholders meeting. After that success, Dad started getting offers to speak at other meetings from various companies recommended by the board of directors. Everything fell into place from then on. Dad started writing more and more. His articles got published in bigger and more prestigious magazines. And he eventually decided to quit his job to focus full-time on writing and speaking engagements. Jack kept introducing Dad to important people. They started hanging out more and soon discovered they both loved playing blues and rock guitar. Their shared love for music brought Dad and him even closer, and they've been friends ever since. Stacy paused, allowing her mother to digest everything she'd just heard. It was quite a turn of events in their lives. Your father is a writer now. Seriously, an author, a published writer. Your father, my ex-husband, is in magazines now. A bewildered Linda grappled with the paradoxical idea of her once underachieving ex-husband suddenly finding success. She secretly hoped it didn't pay too well. Meanwhile, sounds of activity drifted up from the first floor of the house. Guests had arrived. There was the muffled chatter of conversation and light laughter. A new, deep male voice stood out amidst the others, along with a much softer female voice. Stacy watched Janice leave Rachel's room and head downstairs, likely to greet the new arrivals as hostess. Suddenly, Stacy recalled a task on tonight's agenda that had slipped her mind. Mom, I'll have to leave soon. Jack and Mona McTaggart are already here, along with photographers for the newspaper's gossip column and the special photo album they produce and sell. Every year, there's an elaborate photo spread capturing the enchanted moments guests spend at their summer evening affair. Personally, the grandiosity makes me nauseous, but I believe the sales of this album raise significant funds for charity. So in the end, it serves a noble purpose. And we, the participants, bask in the warmth and goodwill there, almost feeling like celestial beings. She snorted. Stacy's voice carried a fair amount of sarcasm, as she found the event excessively pretentious, catering unnecessarily to the vanity and narcissism of its attendees. Nevertheless, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride that her father's accomplishments had suddenly elevated their family to a level of social status deserving of respect, especially from her estranged mother. Linda swiftly defended the high society tradition. Oh, Stacy, don't underestimate this. It's a great honor to be featured in this album and to know you were part of a historic event. You and Rachel should be thrilled to be the guests of honor at such a grand gathering. And since you'll be seated at the main table, your photos will grace nearly every page. I've secretly bought one of these albums almost every year, and this year I'll proudly show off a photo of Josh, you, and Rachel and say, look at these special people. They're my children. Just imagine. I'm actually quite envious of you. But at the same time, I'm immensely proud. I'll definitely be ordering several copies of this year's album as soon as they're available. Okay, Mom, Stacy replied absent-mindedly, then recalled something else. Dad was supposed to attend a writing event in New York over Labor Day weekend, and Rachel, Janice, Fona, and I were planning to join him. Maybe then we could see you. I'd really like that. And I'm sure I could convince Rachel to come too, though she's still very angry with you for leaving. Maybe we'll bring Janice along so you two can meet. You'd probably also like to see Dad, just in case, the daughter clarified. Oh, sweetheart, that's a fantastic idea, Linda agreed. Let's consider the options. I really want to see you and Rachel. As for your dad and his girlfriend, I'm not sure it's a good idea. There's been too much pain on both sides. However, I'd love for you to meet Frank. After all, he's your stepfather now. Upon hearing the last statement, Stacy made a gagging gesture with her tongue hanging out, pretending to be disgusted. Well, no, Mom, I still have nightmares about you and your Frankie snuggling up. Brrr. So the only way I'd meet him and you is if Dad and Janice are there too. I think that's only fair. Linda wasn't pleased with her daughter's reaction, but tried to conceal her emotions to keep the conversation going. Okay, let's see how things unfold, Stacy. But let's not lose sight of our shared goal, to finally reunite. I can't wait to see and hug you and Rachel again. So, let's focus on that, honey. By the way, coincidentally, the New York Literary Guild is hosting a Meet the Books Day on Labor Day weekend. And Frank is using his influence to secure tickets for us to attend. I'll push him to get tickets for all of us, the mother assured. Enthralled by the upcoming prestigious event, Linda eagerly shared her plans with her daughter. This Biennale is shaping up to be quite an esteemed affair. Can you imagine, Stacy? Many renowned writers will be there, some signing their books and engaging with readers and fans. Perhaps you'll even get a selfie with one of the famous authors. You should see how excited Frank is. Need I say more? Did you know David Volches himself promised to attend, and Frank is really keen to meet him? David is an up-and-coming writer, but Frank insists his debut book is sensational and absolutely brilliant. Yes, Mom, I've heard of David Volches. Actually, I've met him several times. I agree his work is truly remarkable. I read his book some time ago and found it quite, well, thought-provoking. Have you read his book yourself? Stacy's jab caught Linda off guard, but she chose not to react. No, to be honest, I haven't read it. It's not really my type of reading. But Frank? Oh, he's a big fan. Stacy chuckled, almost about to comment on how the book lacked enough pictures for her mom's literary tastes. But she held back. Mom, do you have a hardcover or paperback copy of David's book handy? Linda glanced around and then went into Frank's office. Yes, we have the hardcover book right here on Frank's desk. Why do you ask, dear? Look at the back inside of the dust jacket and tell me what you see. Here's a photo of the author of the book. Oh dear, it's Ed. Oh my goodness. This is a photo of your father that I took about 7 or 8 years ago. Oh Lord, how can this be? It can't be David Volches. It's your father, not David Volches. Please tell me if this is some sort of mistake. Stacy doubled over with laughter, trying not to choke as the irony of the situation sank in. There's no denying it, Mom. Yes, yes, and yes. David Volches is actually Edward J. Mercer. When Dad decided to pursue writing, he wanted to keep his writing ambitions separate for various reasons. So he created a pseudonym and published his first novel under the name David Volches. It's quite amusing, Mom. Stacy barely managed to speak into the phone, wiping away tears of laughter. Just think! Your new husband's favorite author is your own ex-husband. It's absolutely hilarious. I haven't laughed this hard in ages. They could make a movie about this. Unbelievable. Mom, this is just too funny. Linda just sat there looking devastated and finally said quietly, Crap. Stacy already had to go, so, ending the conversation, she said, still chuckling, I have to go, Mom. I'll send you my email address and you can send me yours and we'll agree on our plans for Labor Day weekend. I'm so glad you called, and I really want to see you again. I love you, Mom. Phew, this is still too funny. In some inexpressibly gloomy voice, Linda asked, Say hi to your brother and sister for me and give them my number so they can call me when they get a chance. I love you too. Stacy, the eldest daughter, turned off the phone and went downstairs, still giggling to herself at the unexpected consequences of the recent turn of events and preening in front of the large mirror, prepared to take photos for the social onlookers. Stacy knew that tonight she would have no problems with her dazzling smile, but only she would know the reason for her excellent mood. Linda continued to sit in deep thought for a long time, staring blankly at the book lying on the table in front of her, until she came to the clear realization that karma is truly a vengeful cow. She didn't have time to completely move away from the conversation with Stacy when Frank almost trotted into the room. Linda, you will never believe what happened. I just received a card from David Volches. I wrote to him telling him how much I enjoyed his book and how much I was looking forward to seeing him in September. And so he answered me, and he wrote the message with his own hand. Can you imagine? Wait, I'll read it to you now. Dear Frank, you have no idea how glad I am that you read and liked my first novel. Although you may not know it, it was you who provided a very positive influence on my life and career. I don't know if I can ever thank you enough for this, so I look forward to thanking you in person. You have lifted a huge weight off my shoulders and provided a much-needed spark for my personal growth as a person and a writer, so I am deeply indebted to you. Best wishes, David Volches. Frank, in his ecstatic joy, continued to babble excitedly about how he must have met David once because his photograph in the book looked a little familiar to him, but he couldn't remember where he had seen the now popular writer. Now her now husband couldn't wait to meet him in person, hoping to become a good friend to his new favorite author. All this time of intense joy and bustle around her, Linda continued to become more and more gloomy and depressed as Frank's words sunk deeper and deeper into her mind. Finally, in a creaky voice from the depths of her parched throat, she exhaustedly squeezed out, Shut up, Frank. Just shut up.
Welcome to Narrative Stories. In the enchanting world of tales and adventures, we are thrilled to have you as part of our community of story enthusiasts. Here, we delve into compelling narratives that inspire and captivate, bringing characters and plots to life. Thank you for subscribing, and I look forward to sharing many remarkable stories with you. Margaret, a frail elderly widow, entered the Grand Bank building. Its towering columns and pristine windows seemed almost to mock her modest appearance. She hesitated for a moment, taking in the imposing structure that loomed above her, but then squared her shoulders and stepped inside. The bank's marble floors and high ceilings amplified the hushed conversations and the soft clicking of computer keyboards. Margaret walked towards the customer service area, clutching a worn leather handbag to her chest. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Mr. Thornton, a banker known for his sharp suits and sharper tongue. He was sitting at his desk, chatting with a colleague, a smirk playing on his lips. Margaret took a deep breath and approached him, hoping this would be the day her troubles would end. "Excuse me, sir," Margaret began, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Thornton looked up, his eyes narrowing as he took in her appearance. She wore a simple, well-worn dress, and her silver hair was neatly pulled back. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "What can I do for you?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Act 1. Margaret's struggle. 3 minutes. Margaret's background. Margaret's mind drifted back to her life with her late husband, Harold. He had been a kind, hard-working man who ensured they lived a comfortable life. They had a modest home, filled with love and laughter. Harold had always taken care of their finances, sparing Margaret the stress of dealing with money matters. However, after his passing, she found herself in dire financial straits, relying on the inheritance Harold had assured her would secure her future. Harold had often spoken of a substantial inheritance he had arranged, but he had never shared the details. Margaret trusted his words and had come to the bank, hoping to claim what was rightfully hers. Her heart pounded as she presented her documents to Mr. Thornton, explaining her situation. "Mr. Thornton, my husband passed away recently, and he told me that our inheritance was secured with your bank," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Thornton barely glanced at the documents before looking up at her with a cold, dismissive expression. The bank visit. "Do you have any idea how many people come in here with stories like yours?" Thornton asked, his smirk growing wider. "People like you, always expecting handouts." Margaret's face flushed with embarrassment, but she refused to back down. "Please, Mr. Thornton," she implored. "My husband assured me that our future was safe with this bank. I need your help." Thornton's initial reaction was cold and dismissive. He waved her off, indicating his disinterest. Thornton leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "People like you," he repeated, shaking his head. "Always coming in here, thinking you're owed something. It's pathetic." His laughter echoed through the bank, drawing the attention of other customers and employees. Margaret felt her face burn with humiliation, but she stood her ground. Margaret's determination. "Mr. Thornton, please," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill over. "This inheritance is all I have left. My husband assured me it was with your bank." Thornton's response was another cruel laugh. "Sure he did," he said, leaning forward. "And I suppose he told you he was best friends with the bank's founder, too." Margaret's eyes flashed with determination. Welcome to Narrative Stories. In the enchanting world of tales and adventures, we are thrilled to have you as part of our community of story enthusiasts. Here, we delve into compelling narratives that inspire and captivate, bringing characters and plots to life. Thank you for subscribing, and I look forward to sharing many remarkable stories with you. Margaret, a frail elderly widow, entered the Grand Bank building. Its towering columns and pristine windows seemed almost to mock her modest appearance. She hesitated for a moment, taking in the imposing structure that loomed above her, but then squared her shoulders and stepped inside. The bank's marble floors and high ceilings amplified the hushed conversations and the soft clicking of computer keyboards. Margaret walked towards the customer service area, clutching a worn leather handbag to her chest. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Mr. Thornton, a banker known for his sharp suits and sharper tongue. He was sitting at his desk, chatting with a colleague, a smirk playing on his lips. Margaret took a deep breath and approached him, hoping this would be the day her troubles would end. "Excuse me, sir," Margaret began, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Thornton looked up, his eyes narrowing as he took in her appearance. She wore a simple, well-worn dress, and her silver hair was neatly pulled back. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "What can I do for you?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Act 1. Margaret's struggle. 2. 3 minutes. Margaret's background. Margaret's mind drifted back to her life with her late husband, Harold. He had been a kind, hard-working man who ensured they lived a comfortable life. They had a modest home, filled with love and laughter. Harold had always taken care of their finances, sparing Margaret the stress of dealing with money matters. However, after his passing, she found herself in dire financial straits, relying on the inheritance Harold had assured her would secure her future. Harold had often spoken of a substantial inheritance he had arranged, but he had never shared the details. Margaret trusted his words and had come to the bank, hoping to claim what was rightfully hers. Her heart pounded as she presented her documents to Mr. Thornton, explaining her situation. "Mr. Thornton, my husband passed away recently, and he told me that our inheritance was secured with your bank," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Thornton barely glanced at the documents before looking up at her with a cold, dismissive expression. The bank visit. "Do you have any idea how many people come in here with stories like yours?" Thornton asked, his smirk growing wider. "People like you, always expecting handouts." Margaret's face flushed with embarrassment, but she refused to back down. "Please, Mr. Thornton," she implored. "My husband assured me that our future was safe with this bank. I need your help." Thornton's initial reaction was cold and dismissive. He waved her off, indicating his disinterest. Thornton leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "People like you," he repeated, shaking his head. "Always coming in here, thinking you're owed something. It's pathetic." His laughter echoed through the bank, drawing the attention of other customers and employees. Margaret felt her face burn with humiliation, but she stood her ground. Margaret's determination. "Mr. Thornton, please," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill over. "This inheritance is all I have left. My husband assured me it was with your bank." Thornton's response was another cruel laugh. "Sure he did," he said, leaning forward. "And I suppose he told you he was best friends with the bank's founder, too." Margaret's eyes flashed with determination.